We're recording. This is the silent word. Uh, what did I say? Page 150 or so?
153.
What does it matter anyway? It's part four, chapter 21, Rustum's wedding. Arriving at Nagar, Baba was taken by Rustum to his father's house, Sarosh Manzil, and the Mandali were accommodated in what was later called Kushru quarters. Rustum's father was Badur ke Kushru Sarosh Irani, and his father came from Iran and was of the Zoroastrian faith. Keshushru, when he grew up, went into business supplying the British Army and gradually prospered. He married a girl named Gulbai, or Rose's sister, and he had a sister with the same name, but later she was called Gulnar. Gulnar was the first one in the large joint family to hear about Maharaj, and she told the others, but she herself did not become his disciple. That was about 1918. Kaikushru and Gulbai had four children: Rustum, Ardashir, which became shortened to Adi, and two girls, Piroja and Dolly. Gulbai brought her husband and the children to Maharaj, and they all came to love him and respect his word in all things, but not as she did, for she suffered much at the hands of the community because of hers. Moreover, she had to suffer without the support of her husband, who became more and more absorbed in business and public affairs. Their love for Maharaj naturally included his disciple, Merwan, and they became wholly his when he took over Maharaj's share of whatever it is that the perfect masters share. He changed Gulbai's name to Gulmai, Rose Mother, for, he said, she was his spiritual mother. The marriage was to be on 9th May, and the preparations for it had begun. Baba kept himself aloof. On 1st May, he called the Mandali and walked to Happy Valley, 14 miles away. It is a secluded spot at the head of a small gully with a small pool of clear water. It is said that Rama, on his wanderings with his wife Sita and his brother Lakshman, came to this spot, and Sita was thirsty, and he shot an arrow into the rock, and water bubbled forth. Baba stayed 3 days. It was during this time that Aspandiar got the nickname Pendulum because of his habit of swaying from side to side when sitting before Baba. Later, it was abbreviated to Pendu, and Ferdun Naushirwan Driver became Padri on account of his tall figure and solemn expression. On the third day, the Mandali fasted for 24 hours, and some villagers were fed. Just before midnight, Arti was sung, and they raced back to Nagar, covering the distance in 2.5 hours. Adi was an orderly and messenger between the Manzil and the quarters. Every evening, Baba would inquire of him of the guests, who they were, how many, and so on. Now, one of the people who had been invited to the wedding spoke disparagingly about Baba, and Rustum replied hotly, telling him that if that was the way he regarded Baba, it would have been better if he had not come. When Adi took word of this to Baba, he got up and left the house, sending word to the Mandali to follow immediately. When they caught up with him, he struck out across the fields and picked up the road to Arangown. They halted under a tree by a well just before the village was reached and and refreshed themselves. There were a lot of dilapidated buildings about, and Baba inquired of Adi did he know what the place was and who owned the land around and buildings. Adi said that he seemed to remember some while back his father telling them that he had bought an area of land with a lot of old buildings just outside Arangown from the army. This might well be the same place. Presently, Rustem came in great distress at Baba's sudden leaving and begged him to return. Baba said he would not return. Rustem said, "All right, Baba, in that case, I will not go on with the marriage, for a marriage with such a bad beginning could not be successful." Baba soothed him, praising him for standing up boldly to the opposition on the community, probably of the community. But since that opposition had raised its ugly head, it would not be fitting for him to be present. But he would come the day before to Sarosh Manzil, and after the ceremony in Kushru quarters, Rustem and his bride should come to him for his blessing. Rustem went back to Nagar and brought all the bedding and gear, and Gulmai, his mother, and Baba's spiritual mother sent out tastily cooked food. When it was beginning to get dark, a man from the village brought a lantern. Baba said to him, "Little do you know to whom you have brought this light. For this you will have a light all your life." Meanwhile, Doctor and Ramju were called from Bombay and Lanavla. Arriving in Nagar, they went to Rustam's place and were told where Baba was. So after taking some refreshments, they hired a tonga and went to the place. As they approached, they were surprised to see Baba and the Mandali washing their clothes. And when they came up to them, dismayed to see many of them with blistered feet from the 14-mile walk and bruised hands from handling slabs of stone. They had thought that the period of hot service was to begin after the marriage, not before. When night time came, Baba told them to sleep over by the low well wall, as he and the others had done the night before, and where a snake had been killed. In the morning, Baba discussed doctors and Ramju's future. He said that those who stayed with him would have to work as common laborers or get work in Nagar and cycle the distance every day. Alternatively, Doctor would return to Bombay and Ramju to Pune or Lanavla and follow his instruction, as three-quarters of the Mandali would be doing. External separation, he told them, made no difference to spiritual workings. They would be just as near him, and he would be just as much with them there or elsewhere. Ramjud decided to remain with Baba and said, and, and Doctor said he would go back to Bombay.
Okay.
Here's Rosalie reading, folks.
Baba and the Mandali went to Nagar the day before the marriage. He to Khan Sahib's house and the others to Kushru quarters, where they were asked by Baba to lend a hand to Baramji, who was in charge of food arrangements. He put some of them on to washing and cutting up vegetables, much to their disgust. Ramju remarked that the old man must be pulling some strings from where he was at the manzil to deliberately humiliate them in front of all the people. Surely there were many other things more suitable to their positions. Moreover, such work was bad for hands that were unaccustomed to such rough work. One of them cut his finger, and Khan Sahib, who happened to be passing, put snuff on it. It was soon healed. He looked a bit askance at the whole matter and murmured that he couldn't see the necessity for it. A huge, brilliantly colored mandap awning had been stretched across the courtyard, and the bamboo poles supporting it were wound with bunting. In the center, there was a raised platform for the ceremony. The wedding guests began arriving early. All the Kasba Peth and Charni Road Mandali came, and they and the resident Mandali had a happy get-together and exchange of views. The non-Parsi men, that is, the Muslims and Hindus, found themselves in a situation they could not quite handle. The hosts, more friendly and more sophisticated than they, did not pay attention to the formalities that should be observed with guests. You need to scroll because my thing is black. On the other hand, poorly dressed as they were, and some of them having been seen at menial work yesterday, they could not mingle with the guests as brother disciples of the bridegroom. The only useful purpose they served was as reminders to everyone that the controversial Meher Baba was just a few hundred yards away, a reminding sweet to believers, but bitter to the Zoroastrian Orthodox. The ceremony took place in the evening. The mandap was packed with distinguished people, English and Indian. The supper afterwards was sumptuous, and the army band entertained them. But round at Sarosh Manzil, Yassin Qual and his party, brought from Bombay, were tuning their throats for the sweet utterances of separation and union. Besides all the Mandali, only Rustam's near relations were permitted to enjoy that feast, which went on late into the night. The following afternoon, Baba talked with the Kasbapeth men about which line wished to take, as he had with Doctor and Ramju, to stay with him or return to their homes, knowing that either choice would not affect their link with him. Most of them opted to go home. It had already been decided that Kak Sahib, Munshiji, and Syed Sahib would go back to Bombay. Those remaining with Baba were Gustaji, Baramji, Adi, Ramju, Slamson, Barsop, Baidu, Pendu, Nervous, Masaji, Padri, and Jal, 13 in all. The rest left that evening. Bar Soap was permitted to go to Pune for a few days to, in his own words, improve his weak health. Baba now set off for Arangawan, but halted at the Dharmsala near the railway station, where a meal of one cooked vegetable and bread was eaten. He seemed disinclined to go on. Presently, he told Baramji to find a man with a cart and go and fetch all these things, including firewood, they had collected. When he came back, the cart was unloaded, and dividing the lot into small parcels, each was told to take one on his head to Kushru quarters. At this coolie treatment, Ramju was seething again and went by back streets so that he would not be seen by people he knew. Baba, with one of them, remained at the Dharmsala. Khan Sahib came and entreated him to come back to his house. Baba's mood changed again, and he said they would all go back to the camp outside the village and settle down to a regular program of work. Khan Sahib was delighted that Baba would be so near and told Baba that all that area and buildings belonged to him, and Baba could do whatever he liked with it. So they returned there. In the evening, Rustem brought back all the luggage. The place had been a British military camp, and when it was closed down, the buildings, which were of mud or mud filled cavity walls, soon fell into disrepair. Only the post office, which was more solidly constructed, and a big stone lined water tank on the top of a rise some 400 yards away, were intact. The officers' mess, a large building with two halls and several rooms, would, with some work done on it, be serviceable again. This Baba and the Mandali in conference decided to repair. It was also decided to start farming the fields around, which could be watered from the well when the pump was overhauled. It was with the enthusiasm of wanderers who have found a place to settle down in that they threw themselves into this work. 12 days later, the mess quarters were finished, including whitewashing the floors thoroughly. The Mandali spread their bedding in one of the halls. Besides the early afternoon dal rice, there was also now a supper of potatoes and bread. So it was with the greatest satisfaction that they prepared for bed that night. Gustaji felt a lump in the bedding and turning it back found a small snake coiled up. Baba ordered them all to remove to the post office, and in the morning they would leave the place, leave the district, leave the state and the country. Morning came, and Baba had not changed his mind about leaving Arangawan. He asked the Mandali if anyone knew of a place where there were no snakes. Pendu said, "Yes, Quetta." Baba said, "All right, we'll go to Quetta, spend some time there, and go on to Persia." The whole day was spent discussing this new turn of events and in preparations for it. The buying of two bullocks to work the fields had to be canceled. The repaired engine arrived and was sent back to Rustem's place. They left at 10 o'clock the next morning, 25th May, and walked along the railway tracks to the station. There was quite a crowd waiting to farewell them. Gomai, Pilamai, Masaji, Sarosh, and some others went with them. I need more words.
Well, that's the end of the chapter.
Okay, I've resumed the recording. This is Diana reading.
Okay, chapter 22, The Terrible Walk. They spent 6 weeks reaching Karachi, visiting
6 days.
Excuse me, thank you. They spent, maybe it felt like 6 weeks.
Yeah, it probably did.
They spent 6 days reaching Karachi, visiting various places on the way, and a week of sightseeing in Karachi, and then went on to Quetta, where they were met by Rustam Jahangir Irani, the restaurant keeper mentioned earlier in Pendu's story. They stayed there for 18 days, enjoying pleasant walks among the orchards of apricots and other fruits, and in the evening, Rusi's cooking, Gustaji and Behramji resumed having normal meals, and his conjuring and sleight of hand greatly astonished Baba. Rusi had a daughter, Goer, who met Baba for the first time. She later became a doctor, taking her degree in Bombay, and became one of the 6 women who accompanied him on his visits to the West and stayed over the later years. One day, Baba announced that they would not go on to Persia now, but spend 6 months in India, and then go. They would walk from Kashmir to Bombay dressed in kafnis or mendicants' robes and beg food as they went. The material was bought and a kafni made to Gustaji's measurements, and it being satisfactory, the rest were made up, and everyone put his on to see how he looked. Some group photos were taken. Munshiji in Bombay wrote for permission to apply for another position. Baba gave it, but said that he could join the walk for a month first if he liked. Sadashiv and Vajifdar were written to and invited. Baba now called his companions together and asked them if they were sure they were ready for this new phase of fakiri or poverty. If not, they were free to drop out and would not in any sense be considered severed from Baba. After some discussion, Baba gave out 4 points to which all agreed. 1. That those who accompany Baba on tour by foot do so of their own free will and responsibility. 2. No one under any circumstances will leave Baba before the tour ends, but if anyone should be ordered by Baba to leave, he will do so and go wherever he is ordered. 3. As asthma persists in wishing to be in the party, he may go with them if his parents give their permission. 4. None expects any supernatural acts of help from Baba under any circumstances, even to save someone's life. Baba told them that at a certain stage he will be quite helpless and might have to suffer further at the hands of yogis and Mahatmas, both internally and externally, as Maharaj Swami Vivekanand and Gus Ali Shah had. All put their signatures to the agreement on stamped paper. Asma was sent home to Ahmedabad to obtain his parents' permission for the tour. It was now decided, after much discussion initiated by Baba, to go to Calcutta and walk from there to Bombay and not from Kashmir. Sadashiv and Vajifdar were wired to that effect. Then there were more discussions, for with these men discussion was the act of being. And the Calcutta plan was dropped, and the new kafnis were superfluous. They would buy and cook their food as they went. Sadashiv and Vajifdar were wired the change of plan. A small bag of rice and one of lentils were purchased. They were the same weight but different in bulk, and Baidul, to provoke Barsoap, picked up the smaller, whereupon Barsoap said he should take the bulkier because that was what Baidul looked like, a sack of lentils, whereas he, Barsoap, should carry the smaller one because it was handier to his size. Each appealed to Baba, and he advised them to stop bickering. There would be plenty to really complain about after they started the walk. Some water buckets and cooking pots were purchased. On the morning of 25th June, accompanied by Rusi and family, they walked to the station and entrained to Ahmedabad at 4:55. Rusi was weeping silently. The whole day was spent in the train. At Marwar, they changed, and a ticket inspector wanted them to bring out all their luggage and weigh it on the platform scales. They refused to do so. The inspector called the police, but still they wouldn't budge. So the station master was called. He turned out to be a reasonable man and told the inspector he could weigh the general small pieces, but not the bedding. So he sent for hand scales. The station master spoke such excellent Urdu that they thought he must be a Muslim, but he said he was a Brahmin. He in turn asked about the party, and Gustaji, indicating Baba, said that he was their pundit. The station master took the word in its literal sense, so Gustaji told him that he didn't mean a parrot or a priest, but a realized one. The train was about to move, and he got down. A man with scales appeared. Baba suddenly asked Gustaji to give the station master the copy they had of Maharaja's biography. When, flipping through it, he came across a picture of Baba, he ordered the inspector to clear out from the compartment and leave the party alone. They reached Ahmedabad that night and were met by Vajifdar. Sadashiv and Asma, Gulmai and Sarosh were also there on their way back to Nagar. All the baggage not being taken was handed over to Sarosh. Baba talked with Sadashiv for about half an hour. Then he told them all that it had been decided that Sadashiv would not be going with them, but would return to Pune that night. Slamson had arranged lodgings with Parsi Dharamshala in the heart of the city. But when the party arrived, the manager objected to Ramju, Barsop, and Babu Rao as Mohammedans, saying that the place was strictly for Parsis. However, he agreed to allow them in as servants. Baba asked Asma how he got on with his parents, and he said that they had first of all given their consent to his going with Baba, but an uncle who was opposed to him intervened and persuaded them not to give permission. Baba comforted the boy and told him that it would make no difference to their link. In the morning, after tea, they all went sightseeing in an open motor lorry with no seats under a blazing sun. They returned late afternoon, and Ramju and Barsop went to the Jumma Masjid for prayers and then paid their respects at the tomb of Sultan Ahmad, who had had the mosque built. Baba continued his fast. The next morning, the 1st of July, they got up at 2:30 to begin the walk, bathed and packed, dividing the camp gear between the stronger companions. At 4 o'clock, they left the Dharamshala, walking through the dimly lighted streets with the dogs barking after them, and soon came to the city gates. Here, Baba told them to begin repeating the names of God. Ram, Ram, Ya Allah, Yazdan, Ahura Mazda, and the morning was filled with the sound of the glorious names. It was already hot, as though the sun had not gone very far away during the night and was only waiting behind the horizon for the dawn to open the doors for another inferno of a day. By 7:45, after only 10 minutes, they came to the village of Jatalpur. The camp gear was proving very troublesome, not so much its weight, but its awkwardness. So a halt was called under a tree by a small lake, and firewood collected and a meal of dal rice cooked. One of them, going to the well for water, let the bucket rope slip out of his hand. When this was reported, others of the Mandali went and stared down into the cool depths and made useless suggestions until one of the villagers said, "Get a biladi from the temple." None of the Mandali knew what a biladi was, but presently Slamslan appeared with a villager carrying an iron hook fastened to a rope, which he let down and skillfully caught the bucket and drew it up. It was a beautiful spot. The lake was surrounded with trees and green bushes, and there were many peacocks dancing and flying about. It was some sort of a holiday, for going by the number of bullock carts, people had come from some distance. It was decided to camp there the whole day and continue the journey in the morning to Kaira. Ramju, poking about inquisitively, as was his habit, came across a bit of information that branching off at Bareja, just 4 miles from where they were, was a shortcut of some 20 miles to Kaira. Baba, as usual, with proposed changes of program, readily agreed to go by the shortcut. But he said, "Let us not waste time here. Let us have an early supper and go on to Bareja. They reached that place by sunset where, by the courtesy of the vice president of the local board, whom they had met back on the road a bit, they stayed in the Dharamshala. The air was heavy with dust, which made the eyes smart, but Baba kept awake until 10 o'clock and then had them keep watch in pairs. The shortcut turned out to be a bullock track across fields with a fine powdered surface into which they sank over their ankles. After some hours, they rested under a tree on which not a single leaf moved. They rested a second time. Baba would not allow them to drink any water, although they had full water bottles. They went on again. Two of them had some words. Baba swung around and told them not to be children, and in a ringing voice gave them a long lecture on the path and the men who are the men of the path, as he walked firmly on, carrying his share of the baggage, still fasting. Every step now had to be taken with will. Even peasant-bodied Baidul was almost in a state of collapse. The repetition of the names of God was no longer an exercise. Each Ram, Ya Allah, and Ahura Mazda was a real cry for help. At last they came to the river across which was their immediate destination, Kaira. The sight of the waters was terrible, but Baba kept straight on across the bridge into the city till they came to a tea shop where he ordered 1 cup of tea each. Baba also had a cup, and they squatted and drank it. Their appearance attracted considerable attention, and a small crowd gathered. Baba moved on. At last he stopped under the shade of a tree near the collector's bungalow. The shade was totally inadequate, but was near a well. The strongest were suffering the most, and this could not be accounted for by the extra bundles that they had carried, for as said earlier, it was not their weight, but their awkwardness which had troubled them, and that had been adjusted. Masaji and Baidul were bent over on their knees, gasping like bellows for air. Pendu seemed unbalanced, not knowing what he was doing. Ramju also seemed distraught. He said afterwards that he had a fire inside him and could hardly keep in one position for more than a minute. Slamson and Gustaji were the least affected and set about cooking a meal for everyone. With it, they were allowed only 1.5 glasses of water each, and in their state of thirst could hardly swallow the food. Baba told them not to drink again until he told them. Baba asked Padri whether he thought he could continue the walk, and he declared that any further action from him was hopeless. He asked Ramju whether he wanted to return home, and he said it wasn't so much that he wanted to quit, but that he could not see how he would be able to pull through the whole journey. Baba asked them all not to lose heart, but have confidence in him. After that, everyone slept except Ramju, who went down to the river and poured its muddy water over his head for a long time, and Pendu, who kept appearing before Baba with his tongue protruding in mute appeal. At 3 o'clock, a police Jamadar came and made inquiries who the party were and seemed satisfied. But he warned them that recently some children had been stolen roundabouts, and there had been reports of atrocities committed by infuriated mobs. And so the party should be very careful. In fact, it would be best if they moved on as soon as possible. It seemed that already there were rumors that they were the child stealers, and Baba asked Vajifdar and Homusji to go and see the police superintendent, a Parsi, and get his advice and help. But he couldn't be convinced that the Vajifdar before him was the famous cricketer, and Hormuzji's vague explanations didn't help. Baba called a council to consider whether it would not be wiser to take the train to Broch and continue the walk from there than expose themselves to violence on the roads. All agreed that it would be. So they hired 4 carriages and drove to the railway station and stayed in the Dharamshala until the train left at 11 p.m. From Broch, Hormuzji, Masaji, and Pendu would return to Bombay.
Here's Marvin.
The party?
Yep.
The party reached Broch just before dawn, and Baba with Slamson and Hamuzji went off in a tonga to the Parsi rest house. Jamshid Bog and had arranged accommodations with the manager, who was a relation of Hamuzji. Again, Barsop, Babureo, and Ramju were admitted as servants. Let me see. Let me get my notes. Who were admitted as servants. After a meal, they went down to the river Nabata and bathed and washed their clothes. They returned to the bog and rested till 4 o'clock, and then set out on the next stage to Ankleshwar, the route to which lay across the river. Hormuzji and Pendu saw them off. They got into a tub-like sort of vessel, and the boatmen pushed off. There were strong gusts of wind filling the sails and then leaving them to flap, causing the overladen boat to lurch along. Presently there was a thud as it ran aground on a sandbank. The boatmen began yelling and cursing, and everybody, the Mandali and some other passengers, offered advice, but eventually they did the obvious thing and got out of the water and pushed. Mostly the water was only knee-deep, but there were holes into which they sank up to their waists, which made the pushers become clingers. Some progress was made, but it reached a point where they were stuck fast. A second boat was hailed from the opposite bank, but it could only get to within some 20-30 yards, and the baggage had to be carried across to it. They changed into dry clothes. One wonders why they didn't let summer sun do it, and walked on, reaching Ankleshwar at 8:30 that night, and camped on the railway station. Baba now allowed them to drink as much water as they liked, and to sleep till 4 in the morning, each pair in turn keeping watch, when he decided they would train to Surat. They arrived in Surat at 6 and found the commodious Dharamsala empty. They prepared a meal and bathed and washed their clothes from the Nabata mud. They were allowed 3 meals that day. Baba wired Rustam to meet them in Navsari 2 days hence, July 6. Save for making some purchases, everyone kept indoor all day and all went to bed at 9:30. They were up again and on the road at 4 o'clock, picking up the railway line, which they kept to all day, because that was the way Baba wanted to enter the city. At 9 o'clock, they cooked a meal and rested for a couple of hours, and arrived in Navsari at 5:30 in good spirits, having covered the 24 miles in 10.5 hours walking time, without undue exertion. They went to the Parsi inn called Sorab Bog in the heart of the Parsi colony. Here they cooked another meal in the open, to the derision of some women and children. Dal rice, Hindu mush. Parsis were good meat eaters. In the evening, a Parsi gentleman, having got wind of Baba's presence, came for his darshan. Baba sent word that he was tired and wished to be alone, but he persisted, whereat Baba sent Gustaji to stand in for him. And the man, not having ever seen Baba, went away satisfied. Early in the morning, Rustem came, and Baba and the companions heard of fresh rumors against them. After a private talk between him and Baba, he went to see a Mr. Desai. A little later, a police officer came to make inquiries about the party. The names of them all and the reason they were in the place were given to him, but he pulled up a chair, sat down, and crossed his legs, and proceeded to ask impertinent questions, which Ramju, with Baba's permission, began to answer in the same tone. This enraged the policeman, who started to threaten. In the midst of it all, Rustem appeared. His well-cut suit and his cut-and-dried speech confused the officer. And when next Mr. Desai, a respected citizen, entered and said a few words to him, he desisted and left. A little later, Baba went with Desai to his house for a short visit. In the afternoon, Baba said they would not walk any further, but take the train to Nasik, where they would stay for 3 months. After the evening meal, they walked to the station and made themselves comfortable till the train left. Mr. Desai brought a number of his friends and acquaintances to meet Baba. The train left at 10 o'clock for Dardar, Bombay, on the way to Nasik. Borjori, Hamujji, and one Naroji and their families were waiting for Baba on the platform, and soon the Charni Road people came. Dal rice, specially prepared, had been kept ready at Borjorji's place to take on the train. Baba had a cup of coffee. A Parsi man who had been watching Baba took an opportunity to fall at his feet and was reluctant to go after Baba had caressed his face. At Nasik, they were met by Syed Saheb and taken to a temporary bungalow. In the morning, Baba, with Gustaji, Baramji, and Munshi Saheb, who had come through the night, went out to find a suitable place for their stay. They found one near the river, but by the end of the day, Baba did not want to stay in Nasik and said they would go to Arangown, which they accordingly did. They arrived at Ahmednagar in the evening of July 9th, and leaving the platform immediately without handing in their tickets, walked to Arangown. At night, Baba shared the evening meal with his companions.
End of chapter.
End of chapter.
Okay, we'll pick up here next week.